And
Well, now, yeah, okay, I have to go away because too many pronouns.
Shall I take your stick?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think it makes me look more dramatic though.
I'll give you a pipe and a cane if you want.
so it seems rather strange for me to introduce someone that many of you in the room know much better than I know him, and for much longer. But such it is. That's what book publishing is all about. You find yourself in strange situations. Gregoire, as you may know, came to Sahaj Yoga, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, before it was called Sahaj Yoga? Right or wrong? No. Not true. Okay. He looks doubtful. Herbert is sure. Well, it doesn't matter. A long time ago, right? About last Tuesday. In 1979, he wrote, at Srimataji's request, a book called The Advent. And she took the book from him and actually went through, line by line, and substantially wrote parts of the book. And Gregoire has those transcriptions in his, at home. Gregoire was the leader of Sahaj Yoga in America for a period in, was it the 80s?
It was quite a brief.
A brief, okay, well he was. Gregoire has worked his entire career in the United Nations. He did a law degree here at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore and retired quite recently. Now, Srimataji told me to come to America, some of you will know. I was working for a publishing company and I'd started a tiny little branch here. She told me to come and live here. I'm very glad that she did, because it saved my life. But that's another story. So I was here about a year or so, and then she told me to leave. She said, you should get out of that company and start your own publishing company. It's a very interesting story. I'll tell you in detail some other time. But in my career, I've worked for 3 publishing companies. I mean, I've published many thousands of books. When I was at Penguin, I was the sales director. They published 200 books a month. I was there 7 years. Do the math, like 16,000 books. But I can tell you, hand on heart, that the best author I've ever published is this gentleman. And it's not, even if if you take out the Sahaj element, which is everything, it would still be true for a number of reasons. And I'll come to those in a moment. So it's been a great blessing for me personally to publish Gregoire's books. And this particular one, you know, when I first read it, I was really
Indignant.
Indignant. He's applying adjectives to me all afternoon. That's the latest one. I won't tell you what the other ones were. But here's the thing. This was actually beyond my abilities. I was essentially a sales and marketing guy. I'm not an editor. You know, I don't have the ability to really get into the meat of a book and change it. I've no training for that. And I knew that in order to produce this properly, I'd have to learn. Well, I did. It was the hardest job I've ever done. But he's I love working with Gregoire. It's great fun, even when it's hard. And the thing about it was, I was shocked because it was the hardest job I've ever done. It gave me the most pleasure of any work I've ever done in publishing. And the most extraordinary part of it, of all, is that it brought about real change for me. Now, if you start at a very low level, improvement isn't that hard. Some of you may take that view. But it certainly produced change in me, and it wasn't my imagination. When I went to England, I have 3 non-Sahaj sons. They were all saying, wow, Dad, I mean, you're not the same. I mean, they were really impressed. And my wife, who more than anybody knows me, she saw the change too. Now, I think that's remarkable. I've read many thousands of books. 1 or 2 or 3 brought about change in me, but nothing of the order of this book. And that's extraordinary. For this reason, about a year and a half ago or so, I was in Bratislava. I didn't even know there was such a place. But there is. And the reading that we had for Gregoire's book, there was 1,000 people there. They were hanging from the rafters to hear this man speak. And this book was first published in the Czech language, which I'm sure we're all fluent in here. And it was called The Return of the Avastas. And now it's called The Breaking of the Seventh Seal. And the English version is actually substantially different. You know, I'm a publisher. Return of the Avastas was like, made me, come on. I mean, most human beings didn't know the Avastas were missing. So the return is no great news. You see? But here's the thing. It's extraordinary if you've been in a country like Bratislava. It's a city. Wherever, what country is it? Slovakia. Slovakia. Recover yourself there, fella. And hear what the yogis say. Now, at the beginning of this book, there are comments from the yogis from the Czech edition. And I'm going to just read a few very quickly. Here's somebody who says, I swept through the whole book as if surfing on the waves of love. Pure, noble, joy-giving love. I literally became part of the story. Here's someone else. This book is so deep, and its message of the truth about ourselves so precious, that it can hardly be expressed by words, because the reading and the reader become one. Wow. The second volume, which is this, helped me to be more forgiving to myself and also to others, and consequently to be able to enjoy more the inner beauty of my being. Both these books belong to the most precious books in my library. Here's somebody else. This book made an immense impression on me. It felt like a sort of entrance gate into the endless inner universe of man. And the woman who edited the book in Czech says, this is such a powerful and vivid book. It pulsates with inner life and echoes from our ancient memories hidden between the lines that help us recall what we had once known. It offers many levels on which we can walk through it. And Jim Kosokai, who's here, welcome Jim. Jim said when he read it, and he did some editing and helped us there, he said, the magic of the breaking of the seventh seal is that it causes you effortlessly to introspect, but so deeply that the thrill of the experience is transformative. So in other words, the people who read it in the Czech language, in the English language, had the same experience that I did. But I think what really sets this book out as the apex of everything I've ever published is that it contains so much information that I've never read in any book anywhere, as well as this aspect of being really transformative. I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, when Sri Mataji said, at every public talk, I bow to the seekers of truth, most of us just thought, oh well, sort of Indian lady being polite. Gregoire explains in real subtle detail what was actually going on. And it's profound. And she's using the powers as the goddess to do that. Another thing, that there's a whole chapter in the book which is in essence about how to develop positive conditionings. A lot of us, when we come to Sahaja Yoga, having lived a sort of life in the outside world, we bring a lot of baggage. And it's hard to get rid of that baggage. But there is a way of doing it. And again, it's explained in the book. So it's very practical. But all of this is told in the form of a story. It really draws you in. It's quite magnetic. And Gregoire's writing in this book, which at its best is always terrific, his writing has reached new levels. So I think, I mean, it's just an extraordinary and amazing book. And I really commend it to you, and I'm so privileged to be allowed to work on it. Gregoire, thank you.
See, during this sort of introduction, I always look peevishly at the carpet and I wait until it's over because it's always too generous and, you know, you don't really compliments is something which is embarrassing, essentially. But yes, it was great fun to work with Alan, because when I write a book, it's a bit like when I make a public speech. I don't have a plan in the head, in the sense that I found people who come to give a program with PowerPoints as people who are a little bit diminished because they need to put in a PowerPoint what they have to say. And it's also meaning that they already know what they're going to say. So whether they have ABC before them or Z or X, it doesn't make any difference. They'll deliver the same package. Well, if you come, before an audience such as this one, and you don't know what you are going to say, and you are a little bit like a blank page, then the moment and the people and the subtle mix which is created as a happening of a few hours has its own dynamic and will feed whatever happens. And I think it's a way to respect the present and respect those who are here. And so when I start my book, it's a bit like that. So the poor the poor Irishman here, when he got the first draft, it was like blocks here and there. And there was a long silence because despite all appearances, he's also someone very polite, you see. And he didn't want to tell me that he didn't know what to do with it. But eventually, there was some feedback, and I'm also flexible because he belongs to the present, and whatever feedback I got belongs to the happening. And therefore these things change and evolve. And this is why also the Czech version is different from this one, because in between things further change. And at some point you have to stop. So here is the book. But this is really a family meeting because we are Sahaja yogis, and it's not a huge crowd also. So it's good. It's a good moment to be a bit personal. And I will start with a little anecdote which he even doesn't know. I mean, Alan Wary is soon going to be like my wife in as much as he knows all my stories. Soon. By the way, where's my wife? Oh, okay. So one story that he doesn't know. But before I tell this story, I have to tell another story. In the beginning, Sri Mataji was saying a couple of times, like the first India tour, ask for a boon, And so we would be sitting there. So I was trying fast to say, okay, what can I think I asked, may I stay at your lotus feet, or something like that. And then we were asking each other, what did you ask? And then there was a British Sahaja yogi that in my charity I won't mention, who said, I asked her to learn to type, And then I said, oh my God, as a lost opportunity, it was pretty good. So he took this out of the book because I was trying to be cheeky and I put it in the book. It's still in.
You insisted that it stay in?
I thought you took it out. Okay. So he went with the axe, So now, what happened in Ashley Garden is at some point, Sri Mataji asked me, what do you want to do? And that was in the sense of, tell me and it will happen. And for some weird reason, and it is because it is weird that I still remember, because normally I forget many things. But for some weird reason, I told her I want to write 6 books. Why 6? It puzzled me. Probably because the seventh, the 7th house, or the number 7, is associated with silence, because you are beyond the realms of words which project shapes and sounds, and so I had to stop at 6. So 4 has been written, and if I'm true to this weird episode, then 2 would have 2 more to go. I'm not sure. What is nice, obviously, I mean, my books are not commercial successes, but they are success insofar as, first of all, quite a number has been sold in various languages, especially the Advent. But what is rewarding is that individual reader seem at times to have got something out of it. And I think this is, for what he does, for what I do, I think this is really our reward. And when I think, why do I write book? I mean, the question is relevant as an introduction to the reading. I will shorten the reading anyway. It's basically the same motivation. See, I had a couple of defining moments in my life, and one of those moments was definitely when Sri Mataji allowed me to feel the full blast of Amrut. And that was something that I mentioned it in the Advent, and in the legend of Dagatri Khan, in the plane between Frankfurt and Sao Paulo, I was reading the Da Vinci Code, and I was so furious, because this idiot said that the entire secret of the legend of the Grail is that Christ and Maria Magdalena give me a freaking break, So I was so annoyed that in my hotel room in Sao Paulo, I actually added in the legend of Dagatri Khan this link between the Amrut and the legend of the Grail. And actually, once that I did the link, it was obvious. But it isn't obvious to everybody that the most powerful legend of the Middle Age, of the Christian Middle Age, and the entire Arthurian legend, which is based on finding this cup of the Grail, is actually linked to everything that Sri Mataji has manifested. Because when you take this cup and you turn it, it is your Sahasrara. And when you get the full blast of what you can get from your Sahasrara, without going through drugs, alcohol, and all this stuff, because some get it taking unauthorized means, to hitchhike up there, and then they have to pay a price. But when you go through the natural, God-blessed power of Kundalini, first, what you get, me as average yogi, is the bliss in a gaseous state, which is what Gyaneshwar says in his 6th chapter of the Gyaneshwari, where he explains that at the lower level, the Kundalini is fire. This is when the Tantrika are trying to mess up with it, so it burns you. No? And he says at the higher level, it's in a gaseous state. But gaseous state, what is a gas? You cannot see it. It's like vibration. Okay? That was his word for vibration. So yogis normally feel that reality as a wind. But when you raise it to power, when the intensity goes up, then it becomes liquid. All right? And that's why Soma is a liquid, for which the gods and for which the Deva and the Asura, the gods and the demons, were fighting. Okay? So that is in the legend of Dagatri Khan first book, where I established the link between basically what Mother told us and that ancient tradition, which has been, I was in Troyes on my way to Dover. We had an amazing Sri Shiva Puja in Dover, by the way, but I stopped in Troyes where the Arthurian, where the Roman de la Rose, the legend of Arthur and the Round Table, was written there. And the order of the Templars was founded in a village next to Troyes. So I was quite in the middle of, still beautiful old medieval buildings, and otherwise, the sort of decay of today's France. And you see the passing of ages. It was all quite impressive. So basically, you see, Sri Mataji is here not as something new. She activates what was the key and the essence of everything that was critical and essential in the past, and we lost it. We lost it. We lost that knowledge. And this is why in the legend of the Gatricon you have this notion of the Avastas, which return, my dear. And you see, the Avastas are a race, which is a higher race. I mean, I must confess that you do have someone who thought about it before me, which is obviously Tolkien. Because in Tolkien, the higher race are the elves. And shouldn't put it on the floor because there was a picture of Mother. Okay. And why this is true? Why tell something about ourselves? You see, if we are all disciples of Sri Mataji today, and Sri Mataji is the avatar who is going, now I talk to you as Sahaja Yogis, that's not a presentation I would say you would make before a broader public. And you know, admitting we are disciple of Sri Mataji. And Sri Mataji is the avatar who is going to change the course of history. And we are so few. Then it means that what carried us to that point in our life that we can recognize Mother means that there is a long history behind each of us. You know, history of glory, history of crime and châtiment, whatever that was. But we have a long history behind us. And in that long history, we probably, some of us, if not all of us, we went through the cycles of the Kalpa. Because it starts with the Golden Age. And then you have the, you know, Satya Yuga, Dvarpa Yuga, and, you know, you have the Golden Age, the Silver Age, you have the Bronze Age, and then you have the Age of Fire, of Iron, okay? And it means, what is the difference between the Golden Age and now? It's not that the Mercedes were longer at that time, right? It's basically that the knowledge was alive. And they say that Patanjali started codifying the knowledge when it got lost. Because as long as the knowledge, oh baby, that's you, hello. As long as the knowledge is alive, you don't write it down. You know, you don't write it down because it is alive. And there is a limitation in putting things on paper. And that is why also I ended with this limitation in speaking in a mode of fiction. Because by writing in fiction, I give myself the right to be irrelevant. So I don't pretend that I deliver you the truth. I tell you this is a fantasy. But if you are kind enough or curious enough to enter into this fantasy, you will see why I am writing. And the reason why I'm writing, I know it's circuitous, but I go back to the moment where Sri Mataji made me feel the Amrita. See, when she gave me such a strong experience, I was, of course, completely blissed out. But I thought, why did she give it to me? You know, why? Because, why me? You know? And then I thought, okay, it's not just for me. See, if she gave me such an experience, I have to talk about it. I have to tell mankind that there is this frontier with it. You know? And you know, so much in our modern world is predicted on quick gratification. And you know how Freud has won the battle against Christianity. Because most of you are from Indian descent or ascent or origin, you may find this a bit ridiculous, but if you are in the West long enough, you will know that many people here think they will realize themselves through sex, which is a reductionist model of spirituality, because we realize ourselves through the self and not through sex. But if this is even what the West was looking for, even at the level of physical pleasure, you see, but in an aura of complete sacredness, what you experience when you experience the full potential of your sahasrara, it is bliss in every cell, and it's also physical. So, I mean, clearly you understand why the gods and the devas were fighting. And now, who won? Who won the battle? You will note that this is not planned, because it goes like this. So he knows if he would expect me to give a structured presentation, he would start getting nervous, but he knows me. Who won the battle? Ha! You know, the gods won the battle. But why? because Sri Vishnu came in the form, believe it or not, of Mohini, who is the most attractive woman you could imagine. And when I mean attractive, it was not just intellectual grace, right? So there was this enchanting Mohini, and the Rakshasa all went, how we would do when we see such a person in the street. And what it means is the winner is the one who is Chitta Nirodha. The winner is the one who can control his attention. And that is, one aspect of this book. Chitta Nirodha is, I speak about the Chitta Nirodha podium as a, platform of fencing where your attention is under your control. So even if you take a purely materialistic, sex-oriented vision of self-fulfillment, which is still around this house, even if you are logical with it, what spiritual achievement can bring you is a fulfillment that even on those accounts is greater than you can get otherwise. But I met Sri Mataji when I was 26. I realized all that, and the world was what it was, and I was going to say, what are we going to do? There were seven Western Sahaja yogis, half of them, completely blown out. They were old yogis, and I remember at some point, Mother had put her shoes on the table, and she was saying, take the vibration. And so you had 7 people putting their hand toward a pair of shoes, no? And I was looking at that, and these 7 people who looked completely dazed, of course, because the vibrations were very strong. So they were off, high and gone. And I was looking at it, I said, and we are supposed to change the world with this lot, So that was the starting point and the incentive for me to write. So I asked the permission. Sri Mataji showed me a book on creation, which now is going finally to be released, but it's going to be released. And it's the creation written by, so it's not really for it's not for the broad public, because you need to have a sense of awe when you read this. The creation by the one who created is not an everyday affair. And I mean, when I got this manuscript in my hand, I couldn't read it. It was 4 lines, and I had to stop and go in total awareness. So it's not a book. Anyway, so she showed me that, and I thought that Sri Mataji is it's beautiful, but it's going to go above the head of people. I mean, and she said, what should we do? She said, well, someone should write an introduction. And she said, why don't you do it? So me, Sri Mataji. So, and that became the Advent. No? It was the introduction to the Book of Creation, 400 pages, thank you very much. But I'm glad I did, because when I was then before the Swiss prosecutor, who, because we had our kids taken away when there were this problem with the Sahaja Yoga schools, and we were suspected of being a sect, abandoning our children in dubious establishment. And our kids were taken away in the morning by police cars. For those of you who think that you have seen everything in Sahaj, we can still teach you a few things. And when my sister-in-law asked the policeman, when will we see our children again? The policeman said, if you see them again, okay? We went through all this. Now, and that's why we want the school of Sahaja Yoga to be run properly. So, when all this happened, the procurator said, what is Sahaja Yoga for you? And I was, fortunate enough to be able to respond.